Okay, next I have the great pleasure of introducing the man, the myth, the legend of Adam Ferrier, the founder of Tinkerbell. He's going to talk about 3+ and the media mistakes, how not to spend money in media. Adam is a creative-driven strategist who's worked around media for the last 20 years. During this time, he's seen constantly mistakes being made. Oh. And he's going to set the record straight. Adam, over to you.
Thanks, mate. Thank you. Thanks, Sam. I've only spent a year in a creative agency. That was at Saatchi & Saatchi. Since that time, I've spent 20 years in media agencies. So whether that be Tinkerbell, Naked, or another one. And I'm going to do that. Cool. So I'm going to get into it. So the idea of working in an agency that's not a media agency, just sorry. Do you want me to stand here? It frightens the shit out of me, right? Every agency I want to work in, I want to be able to put stuff out into the world, not just conceptualize something that can't be seen. And that's the reason why I've chosen to work in media agencies my whole life. They may not look like media agencies, but they are. Now, I'm going to do a quick little test. Wendy's has briefed you, your Wendy's media agency. They have a store on the Gold Coast, and they plan to have 200 by 2034. Their target market's young families. They're backed by the Flynn Restaurant Group, who have got $5 billion in sales annually. They have a never frozen meat policy. They're an iconic global brand with unprompted awareness in Australia already of around 20%. Globally, sales are flat. 2 questions. How much money would you recommend they spend in year 1? 2, what should they spend that money on? Go. Who's up? Who wants to give us an answer? This is interactive. Fucking shake. I might have to get you to stand up. Anyway, I won't. Go. 0. Who says 0? Why? Where do you work? Who else? Who's got a more logical answer? Anyone? I asked Byron Sharp. He said rule number 1, spend as much as you can. Rule number 2, divide that spend by 12 and spend 1/12 of it every month. I didn't ask him because I knew that's what he'll say. I did ask Henry from Mutinex. He agrees with you. He said nothing. They should focus on getting enough distribution to make brand marketing matter in year 2. I then asked AI, and they said around 20 mil. And then kindly broke it down for me. 40% in digital, 30% in advertising, 15% in outdoor, 10% in radio, 5% in public relations. If you've got a whole lot of different media owners talking to you at the one time, I hate the idea of them fighting. I'd love there to be, is there the equivalent of media owners thing like this for media owners? No? There should be, because they should all work out their role in decision making so they're not fighting against each other, I reckon. But anyway. So why are we all fucked at what we do? So why do we get results from spend 0 to 30 mil and no idea about what channels to help poor old Wendy's on? 1890, St Elmo Leonard, is it? St Elmo Lewis created AIDA, Awareness, Interest, Desire, Action. He was a door-to-door insurance salesman. I'm sure most of you know this. He came up with Awareness, Interest, Desire, Action, which I think is still how lots of brand tracking and kind of brand measurement is done today. Put it in a funnel, which he inspired. Then another chap came along, Herbert E. Krugman, and saw awareness, interest, desire, and action, and said, right, so every time you do media, people need to see your ad 3 times, And when they see your ad 3 times, they will buy something because they'll go from awareness to interest into action. So 3 was the magic number. When I started in this industry, that was the common rhetoric, 3 times. As media budgets have shrunk, it's now gone down to 1+ is kind of, and there's no logic for it. It's just like, 1+, it's all we can afford. It's just all crap. We tend to just make stuff up. And then when we make stuff up on spurious foundations, we tend to build on that. It becomes believed and we just go along with it. And I just want to talk a little bit about that. I want to leave here with, Margie's here, my CEO. She's quite anxious about me not making friends with the industry. So I'm going to try to preface this that we're all in this together. So, why are poker machines so popular? Interactive bit. Bells and whistles. Thank you, Jess. Variable positive reinforcement. Bells and whistles. So you never know quite when the bell's going to go off and you don't know how big the whistle is. And so they're very addictive. There's one particular poker machine that's risen above all of them, Queen of the Nile. Shout out for Queen of the Nile fans. Queen of the Nile dominated the poker machine industry. It was Poker Machine of the Year for 5 years in a row. Everyone loved it. They loved it so much they invented King of the Nile, Queen of the Nile 2, Queen of the Amazon. An aristocrat tried to invent all these other machines to try to replicate the success of Queen of the Nile. None of them worked. Unfortunately, they came to me and said, what do we do about this? And the agency I was working at the time. And so we set up a poker machine lab in a focus group room and got people to play poker machines to try to uncover what it was that made Queen of the Nile so successful. The reason why I love this case study is Aristocrat would have had at the time more data on their consumer than any other organisation in the world, and they could not unpick what made Queen of the Nile successful. So we set up this lab and some stuff happened and we fed back and we found nothing. We didn't have a clue. And I'll just keep on moving on. So this was my first very vivid experience of bounded rationality. We have only a very limited ability to soak up all of the kind of information available to us and make a decision. And we have to make that decision as best we can with the information we have, and we need to see where that gets us. And with Queen of the Nile, there are so many different factors, from the psychological disposition, the context and timing around when Queen of the Nile was launched, what the machines were next to it at the time, what features it had, what technology was available, what the business strategy was of Aristocrat at the time. There was too many factors and we couldn't work it out. Same thing happens when you try to buy peanut butter. You've got bounded rationality, you're trying to work out what the best peanut butter is, you see a shitload of them on shelf and you do the best you can at the time. Now, if we take media and the buying of media as our objective and buying effective media to do whatever, you've got the bounded rationality of the client, they're trying to make a media decision. You've got the bounded rationality of a media agency who's trying to make a recommendation. And then you've got the poor old media person within the media agency trying to make sense of all of this shit. And what happens is it puts pressure to justify the absurd and the made up to make it not seem absurd and made up. And so you tend to have really tortured, very, very long decks to end up on very simple recommendations, tortured statistics, pop psychology, naive opinion, evidence used to justify, not inform, evidence used to bamboozle, not clarify. And buying media or making a media recommendation should be a relatively simple thing to do, and we make it incredibly complex. One of the people, I think they were from radio, said her job is to make it easier for you to buy and for audiences to engage with, and that's what I'd be focusing on. That was unreal. That's our job, make things easier. Here are 3 suggestions on how to do that. If you are from a media agency and want to leave now, I don't mind. In fact, I'd quite like it. So, here you go. Improve your financials. At the moment, how our clients make money, does not match how the media agency makes money. How the media agency makes money does not match how consumers make decisions. And so there's misalignment of financial objectives all over the place. Let's just talk about the first one. How we make money and how our clients make money should be a little bit more aligned than they are. And to talk about this, I'll just quickly sidetrack into Melbourne versus Sydney. Melbourne and Sydney have grown up to be two culturally quite different places. So the best articulation of why this is the place was said to me years ago, that Melbourne had the gold and Sydney didn't. So marvellous Melbourne grew up, and then their job was to hold on to the gold. And so it became conservative. You had all the financial institutions built there. The arts were on the fringe and weren't part of a kind of a mainstream part of a business. And they just had on to this kind of conservative, hold on to the gold, Toorak being the epicenter of the world kind of mentality. Sydney didn't have the gold, so they had to develop a more entrepreneurial spirit, and they had to kind of get out there and fight for gold and kind of, make shit happen. You can still feel that sense of optimism in Sydney today. You can still feel that sense of, oh, what the fuck are you here for, sense in Melbourne today, right? Media agencies like to hold on to the gold. So they've got the money and they sit on it like banks, and that's part of their business. That's part of how they make money, I think, is by holding on to the client's money. Not independent agencies, of course, just those ones. As opposed to other types of businesses who are willing to take a risk and willing to put a bit of skin in the game. So hedge funds put a bit of skin in the game. Production companies put a shitload of skin in the game. We don't put any skin in the game, and we expect to go on risk and reward. And I'll just ask you honestly here, does anybody genuinely tie their financial future to their clients' fortunes? Just yell out proudly, yes, if you do. Cool. So we need to be prepared to lose money. So if you want to have a risk-reward mentality, you need to stop holding on to the money and stop sitting on it like banks, like the big media agencies. I'll say the traditional ones. I'm sure there are many media agencies here much bigger than the network agencies are now. But the network agencies got told to hold on to the money and make money by sitting on it. It's just not the way it should be. So have a risk or reward thing. If you make money, if the client makes money, so do you. If they lose money, so should you. Let's assume you do that and that's aligned. You still don't have a business model that aligns with how the consumer makes their choices, and this is a massive issue. These are some of the coolest, most exciting, most high momentum brands in the world at the moment, and this is just what we could think of in about a 3-minute brainstorm, right? Aesop sold for $5 billion. They built their entire business on relentless sampling, those little bloody coupons, or not coupons, whatever, sachets. Really beautiful store design and really, really clever geolocated distribution, i.e. basically let's go to the funky part of every town and put themselves next to the last remaining bookshop in that town, and they'll do well. So that was Aesop's entire business strategy for years. Vacations Sunscreen, founded by a lovely chap called Locke. They just focus purely on the scent of the product and really innovative product design and 100% organic social media. And now they're one of the fastest growing skincare brand in America, doing very well. Fortnite and Roblox, massive collaborations all the time, doing stuff with Jay-Z or Elton John or whatever it is. They've also got a really social built into their kind of interface of how they do things. Taylor Swift is a musician, so she does these big events and gets everybody involved. So, how the consumer decides. The consumer makes decisions largely based on packaging and the thing. PR, word of mouth is really big. Sampling is obviously really big. AI, search or now AI agents are becoming in vogue. Loyalty programs and review culture is also massive. You don't make a decision without seeing what the reviews are for just about everything. Media agencies make money by programmatic, connected TV, out-of-home radio, bought social, and a bit of financial trickery. There's a massive disconnect there. You're not buying media in the way that consumers make decisions. So if you want to, there's a bit of an overlap, obviously, radio. So how the agency makes money needs to correlate with how consumers make decisions. The more your business model can bring those two things together, then the less friction there is between your recommendation and sales, basically. So if you've got a business model that can say to the client, you need to improve your packaging, you need to do sampling, you need to spend more money on TV, or you need to put on some events. If you can do all of those things in a financially neutral way to you, then you can make the right recommendation to the client. But you can't have media neutrality if you don't have financial neutrality. So you have to have a financial model free from the recommendation in order to be an agent for your clients. So if you've got those two things in place, you've got a risk and reward structure in place, now you've got profit neutrality in place, there's two more things you can do. We can improve the governance of our agencies. I don't know why Yum's written there. And you can improve the knowledge of your agencies. Improving the governance of your agency is interesting. So the client, we have to have our client's best interests at heart. The media owner has their best interests in heart, as they should. So the media owner is constantly trying to tell us that what they're recommending is really good, and we're meant to be deciphering that and doing the best thing for the media agency, for the client. And those two things can have a bit of friction. So the client gives you $100. How much of that is spent on paid media versus arbitrage? Is arbitrage a good thing, or is it a bit dodgy? Double contracting and weirdness. There's a whole lot of different things that can corrupt that process between the client and the media agency. There's also a whole lot of things that can corrupt the process between the media owner and the agency. So from ice cream in the office, I hate it when I see free ice cream from a media owner in the office, I think to myself, gosh, that just makes it that 1% more harder for us to recommend an objective decision to our clients. In all honesty, I hate it. So, but for the media owners in the room, I hide it. When I see the things there, I hide it because I don't want the agency to be corrupted. But this is only my personal opinion. I have to speak. Margie's there now, freaking out at me. But this is only my personal opinion, not necessarily the agency's opinion. But it just makes it harder and harder to have an objective opinion. And that's from free ice cream. But when you take that up to tickets to sporting events and so on and so on and so on, it just gets harder and harder to objectively do the right thing by our clients. And so for strategic governance, I'd say just acknowledge it, be transparent about it. When I say just acknowledge it, acknowledge that if there's free ice cream in the office, people are going to feel more positively predisposed to the media owner that's given you free ice cream, and have that conversation about the impact it will have on your decision making. Don't ignore it. Be transparent about it, involve your clients in it, give them some of the ice cream. Cool. Final thing, improve knowledge. Can anyone, don't write this down, but can anyone just remember the last cool thing they saw, or anything they remember what a brand did, what they did, and what was it? Could someone just yell out something? Oh, how am I doing for time? Sorry? Perfect example. Thank you. You all know how consumers make decisions. The category need gets triggered. You have your brand fights for space in the head. They pick one and away you go. So how do you get stuck in the head at the time of the purchase decision, to me, is really interesting. Because what I need to know is what's left in the head at the time I decide to buy media or not. How long does an idea last? As an aside, this is quite interesting. What's happening? I'll tell you, that's great. That's perfect timing. I wanted somebody at this stage to yell out something from the audience, and I wanted to have an interactive moment to help make the point, but that would do the job. So anyway, how long an idea lasts in the person's head? I need to know how much of that brand is residual in the person's head before we decide to advertise or not. And so the half-life of an idea, to me, is really interesting. What's the half-life of an idea? What's the half-life of a media channel? If I see a brand impression from a display ad or an outdoor ad, which has massively high awareness, but, God, I don't know how long that... I have to keep... If I see an outdoor ad, massive awareness, but how long does that outdoor ad last in your head? Versus, I get on a 50-foot clipper yacht and get a free trip from Sydney to Melbourne, Sydney to fucking... you know what I mean, across the harbour, yes, across the harbour. That might stay embedded in my head for the next 30 years. So I think events might have a half-life of a lifetime. Digital display might have a half-life of a few seconds. Radio is really interesting to me because when I asked that question of yell out a brand that you remember, I knew you were either going to say an event, which you did, or somebody was going to say a radio jingle, which is the other thing I reckon gets stuck in the head forever. So this is all in the... So action changes attitude faster than attitude changes action. As soon as you involve people in something, they're more likely to remember it more rather than passively receiving a message. Events last a lifetime, social ads last a couple of seconds. You need to keep on topping those up. You don't need to do that every time because they remember it forever. I've got no fucking idea if that's true or not. I've been banging on about this for years. Hasn't been researched. But it should be, right? And that's the kind of thing that's the kind of thing we should be working out. Not whether our media... I think we should be working out how consumers make decisions, putting all of our research money into that, and then working out the role each media channel has in helping us understand how consumers make decisions. Now, the good news is media agencies are making shit up. The media agencies that are just making shit up are in a dangerous place. Those who can work through this stuff are kind of invaluable. I think independent agencies have the ability to shape-shift far quicker than traditional agencies that were built on a structure and a financial model that's no longer equipped to handle the media landscape we're now existing in. So I feel like this is a very powerful room. Thank you very much.